assistant, which is
Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
That's a good experience.
yeah, it's great. It's actually been really helpful. Just understanding the process. So are we kind of explaining stuff that we've been working on? Is that what we're doing? Because I can.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, some of your experiences, and then we can
Okay.
kind of, move on and sort of, what you can really sort of expect in a typical presentation. So you had the ability to be part of that conversation with the agent you referred it to, right?
Absolutely, it's great actually. So we've been doing Zoom. So I'm with the seller at her home, and it's been great. So I watched the realtor talk, and then I joined in the discussion just about what she wanted to list the property for, and what just because Squamish is a different Squamish Whistler, just because they were hoping to get the Olympics up there on the mainland again, right? And also they're doing a ski resort there, Brome. So she's been kind of holding on, but the international market's big up there. So I believe January 1st, no foreigners, is that correct? Can buy for 2 years. Is that
There's
correct?
a 2-year ban on non-resident and non-Canadian citizen purchases.
Yeah. So she was really concerned about that because that's a big market over there. So I've been discussing that with them, just because a lot of Americans come up there since Vail bought Whistler Mountain, right? So yeah, it's been good. We got the photos. We have a tenant in there, so it's been a little bit difficult dealing with the tenant because they have a really good price and they don't want to obviously leave, but they understand they can stay until the end of the lease. So that's been good, just sitting and watching her discuss with the tenant. We got the pictures done. Yeah, so it's actually it's gone pretty good, and it's also a mobile home, so learning about that as well.
All kinds of things wrapped into one there.
Tell me about it. And then all of a sudden I get this phone call last Friday about possible rodent infestation. I'm like, okay. Okay, so it's been but it's been great. Like my girlfriend that's a realtor in Squamish, she's been doing this for 18-20 years, so she's like, okay, this is good, we got this. So yeah, I've been just working with that. So,
I'd like to ask, what was the conversation like around setting price with the seller?
well, interesting, because she obviously feels like it's worth more than what it is. But honestly, it's going to be a tear down. It's going to be somebody that wants to just buy the property. So we asked her first, what do you think it's worth, like your value, and let her explain. And then after we talked about, because she was, she didn't know about the new foreigners law coming in for 2 years. So she didn't know
Foreign buyers, yeah.
Foreign buyers. She didn't know about that, and she didn't know. She thought that the ski resort was going to be happening like ASAP, which it's not. And then the Olympics was just announced that we didn't get it. So I just let her talk and let her express why she felt it was a certain price, and then Tara said, well, we actually brought the comparables up of places that have sold recently, places that are listed. And Tara felt, 9 was a good number, and it's been great. Like she said, fair game, let's go for that, especially since there's a tenant in place. It's kind of a funny thing, right? So they thought, set it at that, and then they can reassess it later once it comes closer, and with the market changing and everything too, right?
You know what, and having that sort of conversation up front, trying to figure out, what the goals are and what the expectations are is definitely a really good place to start. And it sounds like you definitely had all the material and information needed to support, what your guys's, evaluation of the property was. And it obviously, it didn't meet her expectations.
No. And she gave us a little bit of a pushback, but we just brought facts in about the ski mountain's not getting built for years, right? It's not even, happening, especially about the Olympics, and just about, it's not a livable home. It's whoever's going to be buying it is buying it to tear it down, right? Take it out of there. So, and once we explained everything, she understood. She's like, and especially because she really wanted to focus on the international market, but it's changing as of January. So she just kind of wants to get it on the market now because, like I said, a lot of buyers, they're really concerned up in that area because that's a lot of their buyers are from the States, right?
Yeah, recreational markets are gonna probably be challenged, a little bit, especially when there's not as much activity. Some of the larger markets are probably not gonna see a huge impact with a ban on foreign buyers for a period of time, and there'll be an interim sort of lull in that type of activity, but a couple of years down the road, people are going to start that process and in order to be able to maintain their ability to purchase and stuff. So I mean, we'll see how that goes, but it sounds like you had a lot of support and a lot of material as part of your conversation, and your quiver full of arrows, being prepared. It sounds like you're very well prepared for the direction of that, and you obviously knowing the client or having a little bit of information and background before you went in it allowed you to prepare for it.
And also too, we really discuss what's important because there's a lot of emotional stuff there. She's been there for a long time too, so you know what I mean, like when you're dealing with, I find, elderly people, there's a lot of emotional connection there, I found. So just letting her talk, letting her express how she feels, and you know what I mean, I just think that really was useful as well.
It's always it's certainly common for people to have a very emotional tie, and you have to have a little bit of empathy for for that position, and you have to understand it, but you also have to have the ability to break down and be able to remove that emotion from the transaction, because ultimately it's a transaction, right? And it's only going to be worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. So
yeah, exactly. And interesting, like I didn't think with is it called the Foreigners Act? Is that what it's called?
Foreign buyers.
Foreign buyers.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like I didn't put two and two together. Like I always think when that's being implemented, I'm thinking like Asia, international. I didn't really put together the US, right?
Yeah.
And they're so close to us. And like I said, we have, like where I live in Ladysmith, I have a ton of American boats in front of my house, right? So I didn't really put it together, like how it will impact just the States.
It's anybody who is not a Canadian citizen or anybody who is not a permanent resident. Yeah.
So.
Okay, Mark, have you had a couple of experiences or a couple of opportunities? Have you got a little bit of information? Have you been building a little bit of a presentation?
Yeah, so with the Nail Estate Group, we're doing Crushing It on Wednesdays, and for the last like 3 or 4 weeks, it's been about the listing presentation. I haven't had a client that wants to list, so I haven't had feet on the ground doing it, but we've done some mock stuff, which has been really helpful. And I feel pretty comfortable with it, but still that real life experience is needed to get to where I need to be in terms of like fluidity of conversation and knowing the next step to lead the person through. And like always, like I don't know this for a fact, but what I've heard is that the listing or the person listing their house will always want to jump to price immediately, and to always like kind of move that to the back end of the conversation and make sure that that's being pushed back, and that they're not just associating a number with your face, and as you walk out the door, that's the only thing they remember. So you want to bring up the marketing, what we do for them, and how we're in a place to get them the highest dollar for their home is key to start the conversation. And so it's been good. I'm learning a lot.
And bring value, right? To really sort of try and hit home the value of you working for them, and what your roles and what your responsibilities are. The regulator, BCFSA, they provide us actually with some very good documentation that helps sort of guide that conversation. Your DORC, for example, there's some very key touch points as on that form that you're supposed to be talking to people with before you do anything. There's some point form highlights of some of the value that you're going to bring, such as your undivided loyalty, your undivided representation, and it's a really useful tool to build sort of confidence and build trust, and really help solidify and grow that relationship.
For sure. I've used the DORC quite a few times now with buyer clients, and yeah, it's every time I've done it, it's gone well. The two transactions I've done, I had that conversation ahead of time, so.
And
So,
actually, a question on that, when you bring it up, and you're potentially having a conversation, have you worked with a realtor before? Have you looked at some stuff, oh, here's a form. If you have, here's something you've probably already seen, but we're gonna go through it a little bit together. I found in my experience, sometimes when you bring that form up and you utilize it, quote unquote, when you're supposed to, most people haven't seen it. Most realtors, or that typical realtor or the average realtor out there, that'll just be a document that gets thrown on top when they sign a CPS or they sign a listing or something like that. But when you provide that and you explain it to them, there's immediate value there, because a lot of times they won't have seen it, regardless of the fact that they should have. And so, just by following that process and utilizing that tool that's available to you, there's like immediate value, immediate knowledge. And there's always a little bit of trust that's gained almost instantly by following that process.
100% agree.
You're really bang on there, Mark, with back to the whole concept around leaving price to last. It's absolutely key that you build rapport, build trust, build a relationship, convey your value, have them sold on you before you start talking price. Because in a normal situation, in the most common situation, they're going to have expectations on price that are delusional at best.
Yeah, totally.
And when
Another-
you don't have some connection and trust, even with that, it often causes a struggle, because they've got an idea of where they want to be, and you've got to work towards getting them to be realistic if you want to ever get paid.
Trying to snap them back to reality.
And talking about what the potential process is going to look like, when a contracted purchase and sale comes in, likely we're going to get an offer at some point, and this is what that's going to look like. It's probably going to have a financing condition. So where we are price wise is going to have to be vetted by a lender. There's going to be an appraisal. There's going to be some financing issues that we have to deal with. We're probably going to have an inspection. When an inspection happens, these are some with an older furnace and that kind of stuff. Like, prepare them for what potentially is going to come up, and everything that you can share with them in advance is going to really help sort of soften the blow of those the results of an inspection. Inspections have a lot of pre-populated verbiage and recommendations and all this other kind of stuff. So if you can have that conversation, or give them an idea, or a snapshot picture of what that process is going to look like when that happens, it's not going to be a shock. They'll have been thinking about it, they'll be aware of it, and it won't be as in your face as just potentially, oh, here's the results of the inspection, there's all this stuff wrong, now the buyer wants this. So anything you can do to sort of preemptively prepare them for those typical scenarios that you're going to see is hugely beneficial. Jenny, how about you? Have you had Jen Pike, sorry.
And Jen, there's a lot of us.
Sorry, have I had what?
Have you had a listing presentation? Have you been?
Yeah, I've been on a couple. And it's just building confidence, getting your spiel down pat. I've got 3 active buyers going on right now that are like ready to go, but all 3 of them are pending on sales of current properties. So it's kind of frustrating that, the market's moving, but it's moving very slowly.
Are those buyers relocating, or how did?
No. So one has a investment property in Kelowna that she's trying to sell. Other clients are selling their current home in Parksville. And then the listing that I have in Duncan, they also want to buy when that one sells. So Yeah, if we can get those moving, then it should be good. But
So the listing that you have, you know, how was that process in getting that signed and getting that engaged?
well, it was actually really easy because it's my hairdresser's mom, so I knew them. They chose me, so it was like, yeah, it was a no-brainer. Allie tagged along for that one because it was my first strata property. So just making sure that I had all my T's crossed and I's dotted to get, you know, the right documents from the Strata Corp and all that stuff. But yeah, that one was actually pretty easy.
So really, I mean,
The
there's a
listing that you have right now, so how long have you had it?
Like 2.5 months. We've done 2 price drops on it already. She's paid all the upcoming special levies, so they just had a heat pump put in a couple of weeks ago. I'm actually gonna go over and take some new pictures to switch out my primary photo. And I think she's gonna go down a little bit lower, so we'll probably do our 3rd price drop on that one.
when you guys initially, you know, had that conversation of, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there.
It's okay.
I was just gonna ask, is it priced where you've recommended that it be priced?
Yeah, we started off at 325. Now it's down to 299. There are 14 units in that building and 3 of them are for sale. My lady, like I said, has paid all the upcoming special levies, which was just shy of 20 grand. She had all new windows put in last year, all new light fixtures. I am confident that hers is the nicest, definitely the nicest out of the 3 that are listed.
Have you seen the other 2?
Is it the best deal?
It is the best deal. Yeah. Only on Photos Mark, but I did have one realtor took his clients in to see all 3 units. And then they went back for a second showing in ours. Yeah, but they decided that the location, it's got a pub next to it. It's on a busy road. They have kids, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. But fingers crossed, hopefully it'll start moving.
What's the address?
93271 Cowichan Lake Road.
So the expectations of the seller, you know, where are they at, and what are those current conversations like with the sort of limited activity and, you know, no offers presented as of yet?
It's kind of a different scenario and I don't want to say too much.
Okay.
As you shouldn't.
No, but she's not well, is all I will say. So they are determined to sell.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So something just as a kind of a takeaway for you when you're working with your buyers, when you see that the history of a listing shows a series and a progression of price reductions, have your radar on, because that's probably a pretty motivated and serious seller that you want your buyer to be considering.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, we'll see, you know, probably a fair few price drops moving forward. And I think, you know, and I don't know if any of you, you know, saw or heard yesterday, but obviously, you know, the market is kind of shifting. And we actually had a little bit of a real estate update on Global and CTV News. And the discussion was actually about, you know, some potential really good opportunities for buyers. So, you know, the messaging has moved away from, you know, crashing and falling and, you know, sky falling and bottom dropping out. And, you know, the verbiage that we're hearing from the general media right now is some good potential opportunities for buyers that are shopping. So, you know, something to keep in mind and share. Andy, you joined us. Good morning.
Morning.
How's
Sorry,
how's your experience been? Have you had a couple of listing opportunities, listing presentations, and gone through the process a little bit?
Well, the very first listing opportunity I teamed up with April, and it was a really difficult one, where the guy was is mentally ill. I think I've talked about this in the past. So that's just kind of hanging in limbo. So I was just kind of a fly on the wall watching April do her thing, which was really confident and quick, and just got kind of right to the point, and you know, made sure that she was listening to its wants and needs, and just kind of really guiding and going through the process with them, which was good. So I learned a bit there. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but we'll see. My second one is on the market right now on Gorge Road. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and I've teamed up with Ryan on it. And it was a bit of a bumpy start because it was right in the middle of renovations from a flood that had happened in the suite above. So we put it on at a reasonable price, and that we thought, but it didn't really show that well because all the furniture was kind of from the bedroom was, you know, kind of pushed into the living room area, and it was just kind of disorganized. And we were just hoping that someone would come and just want to buy it as is, you know, see the potential, know that it was being fixed by insurance, all that. But long story short, it just sat and it didn't really garner much attention, so we took it off the market. And then we just put it back on now that, you know, the work's been completed. You know, we moved out all of the furniture, so it's a blank slate now, and we put a new price on it. So it's been good. You know, the presentation, yeah, I'm taking the killing, crushing it as well. But we haven't really, we're kind of just going through the program initially right now. And we're trying to kind of figure out how we can tailor it to our branding, you know, with the Neil Estate Group, and kind of make it our own. But I mean, the key points are there. You know, it gives you a framework of how to go through a listing presentation and the touch points, and you know, it's been good. You know, I think that seeing the way that more tenured agents handle their listing appointment, and then seeing the way that we're being taught with crushing it, you know, it's just a matter of just like anything, it's just a matter of time before you just pick it up and you grow more confident with the process and make it your own, right? So we definitely have the supports in place to do that. So I feel very fortunate in that regard.
It's always good to have, you know, the ability to bring someone along, or lean on some support, you know, and some mentors that are kind of helping you and pushing you through the background, you know, partnering up, you know, and sharing, you know, that experience with somebody who has a little bit more knowledge can sometimes help navigate, you know, difficult situations. You know, it sounds like there was definitely probably some motivation on the seller to put up the property. And so that discussion, you know, that you had with the seller when it was, you know, mid repair, you know, what were the expectations there?
Well, it was, he knew that, you know, the way it was, and the way we informed him of the way the market was going and how it was kind of on a downturn and had been ever since the peak, you know, in late March and April. So he was aware of that situation. You know, we did a pretty good CMA at the time to get a good idea of what a fair price would be. So, you know, it was kind of just like a shot in the dark, and, you know, you know, it did garner a bit of attention at the start. But as time went on, and more inventory came on the market, you know, it was just one of those things. So he understood the situation, and, you know, his expectation was to just, you know, throw it out there and see if he could find the unicorn, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, that never transpired. Unfortunately, him and his wife are still kind of stuck on that unicorn investor coming in, and so we do have a plan B for our relist right now, and that's, you know, in a couple weeks time. You know, and we told him it's a lot better to price it right now than instead of riding the market down. But I mean, you can lead a horse to water, right? So
That's a really good point, and you know, something that always is worth always you know, have is, you know, what's the market doing, And, sure, we have some sales data that will suggest this property could be at this price, but where we are in our market with the increase in inventory, the decrease in activity, and, the tempering or the cooling of things happening, I mean, sure, the historical data that we've got going back suggests this, but we really do need to consider what we have to do to position ourselves ideally, 2-3 weeks from now. So there's a bit of a forecasting element that's required, and it really emphasizes, the need to price a property correctly, and having, and it's difficult. Sometimes expectations are always based on what has happened, but when you're in a market that's shifting and turning, and there's obviously some happening, you really do have to make sure that they understand there's some consideration for what is going to happen in the next 3 weeks, not just what's happened in the last 3 weeks or a month kind of thing.
The other
Well, and this is
exacerbating factor is that we as salespeople are, by our nature, pretty optimistic bunch. And in my experience, most agents also think the properties are worth more than they are. And you've got to be prepared for that and somehow convey to your clients that, how uncertain it is. So you can't just give them a number and this is what it's worth, and this is what it'll sell for. That you've got to be able to understand and have them understand that you don't know what it's worth until a buyer shows up, and it could be worth less than you think or more than you think. But in these market circumstances that we're in, it's probably going to be worth less than you think.
Yeah, I think that's so key as advisors, and our job to educate our clients. It's not so much the CMA, because that's just a snapshot of what happened in the recent past, and you're hoping the recent past, and what's on the market right now, right? Really, the most important thing I think for us to relay to our clients is the current market condition, and listing it not for today's market, but what they're going to see maybe in a month's time. You look at things like the days on market for that area, right? You look at the percentage that it's dropped in the last couple of months, and that trend, you put all that together, and then you come up with a price for your client, and it's not something that you're dictating to them, because you're in it together, with them. So I like the idea of asking them, well, what do you think it's worth, right? And then they give you their opinion, right? And then if it's usually way out to lunch, pie in the sky up here somewhere, but that's when you say to them through our training that we've received, where on these comparatives in the last little bit do you see a price that reflects what you think it's worth? Right?
Having
So
data and having that information, I know Ron's a big proponent of showing, if you can show it to them, don't just tell it to them. So having that data, having that information, available, so that you can kind of sit down and really, in challenging times and markets that are shifting, it's often challenging because they want a number. They want to know exactly how much it's worth, and that's what they want to sell it for. But a really good thought, or a really good sort of idea for us, is to definitely have a range, and have that conversation and be prepared, with data and information that supports, okay, best case scenario, this is what we're looking at most likely. And worst case scenario, this is potentially what we're looking at as well. And where anywhere in between is what we could expect someone to typically come forward with. What that looks like, we don't know until somebody comes forward, because again, it's going to be worth what somebody's willing to pay for it, and it may not meet your expectations, and so you have to kind of be prepared for that, and having that discussion up front too allows you the opportunity just sort of to plant that seed and prepare them for a less than ideal offer coming forward.
yeah, one of the things that I've run up against is, sometimes when I explain to clients, where do you get your price? It's pretty crazy, and it's lunch. I mean, look at these comparatives like that are on the market right now that you're up against, that you're competing with. Not relevant recent sales, but comparable properties that you're competing with. And they'll be like, well, if we price it at this price, chances are we'll get a lowball offer, you know, and then I'll get the price that I'm looking for. It's like, really? I mean, maybe if you're up at this price, you might not get any offers.
And you know what? Sales price to listing price ratios is a really good data point to introduce at that conversation or at that point in a conversation. It's a pretty easy number for us to pull off of, you know, the matrix system within a certain amount of time. And generally speaking, if you're dealing, you know, with a $500,000 property or whatever the price may be, there typically isn't, you know, 100,000 or, you know, people don't look for 20% or 15%. You know, it's not something that you would typically find. Is you don't need the ability to negotiate $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 typically. And if you do get a lowball offer, then, you know, you have the ability to kind of, you know, well, for one, you may have to actually navigate the seller who doesn't even want to deal with it because they're offended. You know, that often will happen if you put a lowball offer in. So you're making sure they're prepared for something like that in advance is, you know, if we get a lowball offer, you know, this is how we'll address it. Well, you know, we can go back with it. We're not just going to not respond because we obviously want to have that conversation and keep it going. So the reality is these are our options. You know, we can counter back, tell them, you know, they just need to come forward and have that sort of, you know, preparatory discussion to, you know, ultimately just be prepared. Natalia, did you have a question?
Andy, you should mute yourself. Your cafe background noise is really loud.
I was just going to mute him.
Yeah, I have a suggestion, okay? I have a large experience in real estate and I've learned something. It works for me very well. Maybe it will work for other people too. We have to remember when we're meeting potential buyer, seller, whoever, whatever, for whatever reason, and we talk and we talk and we talk and we show and this and that, you have to remember they meet other people too, okay? You're not the only one, most likely. And I have a habit, okay, that I send them an email after our meeting, maybe not immediately. 1 day or 2 days after, I send an email with the bullet points to say, oh, today we discussed this, and we whatever the subject was, right? Because talking to different people and being busy with their own life, people forget what was it sometimes, and definitely in 2 months they may not remember at all. This applies to expectation management, for example. It's always good to send an email, and when they say, oh, you didn't tell us this, or you didn't tell us this, if that happened, you know, it's helpful to have this email. Another thing, when you communicate with people by email as a recap, they will remember you better than anyone else because, you know, it's just the way of operating your business. They see how meticulously structured you are. Okay, it's not only you came out, you prepare the comparable analysis, blah, blah, blah. They see that you have a structure to your business.
And I think honestly, too, Natalia, the key point there is making sure to follow up. You know, Natalia is correct. You know, if you're going into, you know, a listing presentation, you know, chances are it's going to be competitive. You know, and ask them too, if you're working with a seller, you know, who else are you talking to, or, you know, who else is coming by, you know, try to figure out, you know, who you're going to be competing against and, you know, what value you bring over and above, you know, whoever else it may be. Maybe it's a, you know, a non-RE/MAX brokerage. You know, there's leverage in the brand that you guys all carry with you that, you know, really does, you know, sort of elevate you and put you, you know, above the crowd, I guess you could say, but, you know, maximize, you know, the tools that are given to you to elevate you, and follow up is super important, and don't leave it too long. And, you know, maybe it's a 24-hour follow-up, or honestly, you know, if you're meeting somebody in the morning and, you know, you have that conversation and you know that they're meeting a few other people, make sure you take time later on that evening to, you know, send them a note, you know, thank you for, taking the time to meet me. Here's a little recap of our discussion. Please let me know if there's, if there's something that I missed, or if there's something else that you're looking for. I'll touch base and follow up with you again shortly, and then call them the next day, kind of thing.
I think too, based on what I've been learning, is the best time for you to get them to sign the listing agreement or the buy agreement is at that appointment. So if you have to spend 15 or 30 more minutes going over their queries or questions, then you should do that, because once you leave that appointment, the chances of them signing with you just drop dramatically.
And honestly, that's the best part. That's a key part of your presentation and getting prepared. Make sure when you go there, go in thinking you're going to leave there with a signed listing contract. Don't go in expecting to have to call or follow up in a couple of days. Be prepared to sign that paperwork, and that means make sure you have all of the appropriate paperwork necessary to complete that listing.
A couple comments here. So one of the most important questions you can ask before you start talking about price is, if we can agree on the price and terms, are you ready to go ahead with me? Like, make sure they're sold on you before you start talking price. And when you start talking price and you get in there, before you leave, before you fold up and go because they want to think about it or whatever, ask the question, what would it take for you to list with me today?
And
And then when they say, like, okay, well, we want 950,000. If you list it for 950, we're ready to go ahead. The next and maybe most important thing is, if you know it's not going to sell more than 850, you've got to be prepared to stand up and walk away, to fold up your books, go away, after you've exhausted all possibilities to get them to be realistic. Don't just take the listing.
What about if you said to them, okay, we can list at 950 today, but if we'll see how much action we get in a week or two, and then
That's in their best interest.
What's that?
You think that's in their best interest to ask 950 if it's only
No,
worth-
but if they're being like super stubborn.
I personally am going to say, I guess I'm just not the right agent, or it's just not the right timing for us. And I wish you the best of luck. And when you do that, sometimes that's going to be the smack upside the head they need to start actually listening to you. And sometimes you will just have saved yourself a whole bunch of grief and time and money listing something that you're never going to sell.
Mhm.
That's my approach.
And that's ideal. The challenge there too, if you agree to list a property that's $100,000 overpriced, it is, everybody knows it is. The reality is other realtors are going to know it also. And what's going to happen is the relationship that you're trying to build or trying to develop with that seller is just going to deteriorate. They're not going to get activity. Their expectation is to sell the property. They want you to sell the property. And, you're not going to have a whole lot of cooperation, because everybody understands what the market, every realtor should understand what the market is, and they're going to see what the comparables are. They're going to know right away that it's out to lunch. Your relationship with that seller will get strained, because obviously they're expecting you to sell it, and you're going to run around in circles and try to come up with some sort of reason other than it's just overpriced. And that relationship will fracture, and walking away, as Ron said, sometimes is that, oh, wait a minute moment that the seller does need to hear. And, tell them to, if just like, maybe call me in a month. If you want to list it at that number, then, here's a colleague of mine that might be willing to take it on for you. But,
Just give them the roster, anybody will.
Yeah. Ultimately, when you're upset and frustrated, and a month and a half, 2 months from now, you're sitting here scratching your head wondering why, give me a call. We'll revisit this conversation and we can move forward.
I think too,
And
like our
it's-
job, is to set them up to succeed. Like, that's our job, right? And I think if you explain that to the client too, if they're wanting to come in at an overpriced, like, just explaining to them, like, we're doing this not to have your house on the market for months on end. We want to succeed and actually get the process done, right?
Do you want to list or do you want to sell?
Pardon?
Do you want to list or do you want to sell?
Yeah,
The reality is Darren's getting to there is it strains the relationship, and the best of your friends, the people who absolutely have all of your trust, you know, maybe not your own mother, but just about anybody else, that relationship is at high risk. They will blame you for it not selling. They will not accept if they've got it in their head, a number, somebody else is telling them the number, other agents telling me I can get you that number. You'll wind up, I've made a great living from being the second or third realtor.
yeah.
I'm the ones who failed.
And the key there is, you know, just be confident in your information, be confident in your knowledge, and be clear. Yeah, you know, the seller will have expectations, but you know, you do have to manage and set those. And you know, don't put yourself in a position, because it's just going to cost you money. You're going to have listing fees, you're going to have photos, you're going to have floor plans, you're going to have all this stuff that you're going to be investing money in, and you know it's not going to sell. And you know, make sure that you know, you want to set your client up, you know, for a win and a success, but you also want to set yourself up. You know, you don't want necessarily to take a listing that's just going to take all of your energy, it's going to take all of your time, it's going to take a bunch of money, and it's just going to cause you grief.
Gonna work.
Now,
Can
there's
I-
also, Jenny, everybody, there's also the school of thought that you can't reduce a listing you don't have. And so I know there's a lot of fear and resistance from agents to say no and be prepared to walk away. And we're more likely to kind of cave in and say, okay, I'll try. We'll try it your way. But you know, if you're gonna do that, have also a conversation and that get their commitment to adjusting the price when it doesn't work out. One of the reasons for more than 20 years I've used Coming Soon is because we'll often propose when they've got those crazy out of line expectations that, look, let's do a little bit of a soft intro to the market here. We'll test the waters. I'll get my agents from my office to come for a look. I've got another group of agents. We'll get our team to look. We'll promote it. We'll put a sign up, see what kind of response we get. And if if it sells the first day, great. But you know, if it's not going there, the feedback we're getting, we'll be able to refine and adjust and put the price where it needs to be. I've done that many times with success. The other thing is post-dated price reductions. I've actually written an actual schedule right into my Schedule A for what the price will be at different points in time if it remains unsold. If you can get them to agree to that, that's a giant win over just listing it for too much.
And by Schedule A, obviously that's the addendum page to your multiple listing contract. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something that I wanted to touch on as far as, you know, a strategy and try to navigate the expectations of a seller. So you do take the listing and it is high in price and you agree to, but you know, in return, you also agree to, you know, a schedule of what, you know, the next 6 weeks are going to look like as far as, you know, adjustments and so on. So having that written into your listing contract, you know, gives you, you know, the ability to, one, obviously take the listing, but two, it helps you sort of navigate and manage what the overall expectations of the seller is. Or our seller is. Yeah. Natalia, did you have something?
Yeah, I think it's just a recap of everything everybody said. They are ready to be led if they see you as a leader. Okay, but to see you as a leader, you need to connect with them and to see what type of connection you're building and with who. People will give you a moon and a stars, everything, and they will do everything you say if they see you as a leader. And how to get there, that's another story. It's not only numbers, it's not only market explanation and this, you have to understand everybody does it. Every realtor will come and will say market is this, statistic is this, the number of sale is this. It's all the same, it doesn't change. What's changed? You, okay? It's you. Do they see you as a leader to lead the sale?
We talk about that a lot, and you know, it really is, you know, a business that you're going to build, it's all based on relationships and, you know, the interactions you have with people, the data, the statistics, you know, as Natalia said, that is all there. But really the foundation is all about relationships. A realtor that has been around for a long time has a lot of great clients and a lot of great relationships. And those clients are maintained as clients because of the personal interaction and the personal relationships that are built. They become friends, you know, trusted. You're a trusted advisor. You know, it's your job to help them and give them all the information and material they need to make the best decision possible for them. We will always continue to talk about, you know, building and establishing those relationships, because that really is a key fundamental to establishing your practice. We're coming up on 10 o'clock. Does anybody have anything else they want to touch on that we may have missed, or something that's come up throughout the conversation?
I was going to add that the real key to a really good listing appointment is being really prepared and bringing everything and understanding and knowing the market and being confident with what you're going to say and so on and so forth. But the most important thing of all is asking the right questions, taking the time to really dig deep and understand what their wants and needs and priorities and fears, and then to, you know, be the person that can, you know, fulfill and make them the most comfortable with, you know, how to move forward.
And on top of that, too, doing a little bit of research in advance. You know, if you don't know the individual or you don't know the people that you're going to meet, you know, take some time. And, you know, the internet is full of, you know, opportunity and great information on pretty much just about everybody. You know, a Google search or a Facebook search or an Instagram search, you can find a lot about an individual or a couple through what they're posting on social media, which helps you prepare for how you're going to approach that situation and approach that conversation with them, because you'll get to know them a little bit before you actually meet them. Bye, Natalia. Okay, if nothing further, as always, appreciate your participation in the discussion. It's you know, I really enjoy kind of, you know, walking through some of these processes and hearing, you know, about your experiences and having, you know, a little bit of an opportunity for everybody to kind of gain and offer a little bit of different perspective. So thank you for taking the time, as always. And, you know, feel free to reach out anytime you have a question or comment, and, you know, just know that we're here to help you.
So thanks, Darren.
Darren.
Thanks, Ron.
Darren.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Here's everyone.